It's alarming that at my big age, I just learned what nodding was thanks to reading Bride and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. But before I get to that, hey, my name is Frank. Welcome back to my channel where I do talk about all things bookish. So yeah, nodding. I didn't hate it. I actually didn't hate it. So before I get into what I really want to say, I do want to let you know that there will be what I consider spoilers. Basically, I just don't feel like trying to censor the things that I want to talk about by trying to think about whether or not someone who hasn't read it is going to feel like it's spoiled. This is a deep dive analysis. This isn't just a book review. This is me genuinely wanting to give my thoughts and opinions and feelings about specific things. So if you have not read these books, then save this. Come back to it for later after you've read the mess that is these books. Now, if you really loved these books, then you're not going to like this review. If you hated these books, you're probably not going to like this review. And that is because I still have not really settled on how I feel about them. And so I'm going to try to work it out through just ranting at my camera in this video, and we'll see kind of where I land. But the basically what I'm trying to get at is that I loved and hated these books so much that I landed on a solid like 3 stars for each of them because I had such extreme emotions reading these books. So to start off, I went into these thinking that it was a duology, thinking that Mate was just a continuation of Bride. And it kind of is in the sense of it being from, Mate is from Serena's point of view, but they're more like companion novels. Like you theoretically could read Mate if you hadn't read Bride. I do think that Bride does do a bit more of the world building and setting up like the politics of this universe more so than Mate does, but that's okay. Like I said, theoretically, you could read one without having read the other. Now, the things that I enjoyed about this was the fact that when you go into any kind of romance, in this case, these are technically, I think, monster romances, but when you read the romance genre, there are certain things within this genre that you are expecting. One is you're expecting certain kinds of tropes. So, for instance, in Bride, we're dealing with like a forced proximity situation. In Mate, we're having like some miscommunication trope going on a little bit. Another forced proximity situation. You're also looking for a happily ever after or a happy for now. And in that sense, I think that these books did meet that criteria. You know what I mean? You were never surprised by any of the turns of events that were occurring. They played out in a very formulaic way. And I don't have an issue with that because I think when you're talking about a genre like romance, you want to stick to that formula. It works. You're going in with this understanding of what kind of experience you're going to have and that you have certain expectations for that experience. And I think that these books meet the expectations that someone has going into reading a romance. Okay. So, in that vein, I actually think that these books were well done in the sense that they were formulaic, predictable. And again, that's not a dig because that's what you want for these genres. I'm going to have to let my baby out in a second. So, if in the next frame he's like running around the room, that's what happened. Now, unfortunately, it was everything else that I disliked about these books. I didn't find most of our main cast enjoyable. I thought they were frankly all quite annoying, except for Lo. I think he was, I guess, out of the 4 of them, if we're talking like Misery, Lo, and then Serena and Cohen, like I think Lo was probably the most realistic in terms of how he was portrayed in these books. Everybody else was fucking irritating to me. The reason I'm talking about these books in tandem is because a lot of the issues that I had with each of them were basically the same for both books. So that's why I'm going to be talking about them alongside one another. But I will be referencing specific events in each respective book. Let's start off with Misery's name. Hated that. Hated that. Especially because she had a twin brother and his name was Owen. Are we serious? You're going to have 2 twins. You're going to have a set of fraternal twins, and you're going to name one of them Misery and the other one Owen. We couldn't have named him Vlad or something like that. Vladimir. That would have been fucking hilarious to me. Because that's really what I take issue with for the most part is that I thought that these books were trying to be camp, and it turns out that they were just poorly written or because I feel like the campy element was not played up enough that it justified feeling like that was the intention of these books. Now, I don't know what Ali Hazelwood's intentions were. I have also not read anything else by this author, so I don't know what kind of writing she has outside of these books. But for these 2 particular novels, I did feel as though it felt like a 15-year-old was writing fan fiction. That's what these books read like to me. And it sucked because I was going into it knowing I was going to read a romance. And so I was ready and primed to like and root for our couples. And I just disliked the characters and the cast so much that I wasn't rooting for them. Yeah. The only parts of these books that I felt like had any actual care and time and effort put into them were the sex scenes, was the smut. And hey, they were pretty good. Like I didn't mind them, but it felt like these books were written and revolved around the smut and then everything else came secondary instead of the other way around. If you go into these books with the viewpoint that they're written like bad 90s pornos, in which it's like the plot is predictable and kind of lame, the dialogue is absolutely atrocious and corny, but the sex is pretty good, then you might enjoy these books. But if you're going in thinking that it's going to be a romance that, you're really building up their relationship and you're really enjoying these characters and you're really rooting for them, I was left a bit disappointed. I was left, you're just a big boy now. You're just a big baby. Stop eating my earlobe, please. There's a particular simile. It's in chapter 3 of Bride. And like, this is just kind of what I'm talking about, where like the writing felt just half-assed. And if I remember correctly, Ali Hazelwood has published like 1.5 million books in the last like 3 years. And it shows. It shows that she is going for quantity over quality. The writing in these books was not quality at all. And it sucked because they had the potential to go from being like, okay, yeah, I'm going to forget these as soon as I start reading something else, to like, wow, these could have been really fantastic monster romances that made an actual decent impression. So an example of this poor writing that I'm talking about, it is in chapter 3 where Misery says, Anna sighs and rolls her eyes and pouts like she was asked to file a tax return. This child is 6 years old. I highly doubt that Anna even knows what a tax return is. And that's kind of just an example of like, this simile doesn't make any sense. The simile is just lazy, it's strange, it's off-putting. And there was so much of that in both of these books where I was like, had you taken like an extra like 15 minutes to really think on this and just come up with a simile that made sense, the writing would have been great. And that was my biggest gripe with these books, was that it felt like the author didn't care, so why should I? It felt like the author was just kind of like half-assed churning these out in a very James Patterson, Nora Roberts like quantity, quantity, quantity. And it's like, if you just take a little bit of extra care to actually invest time into developing unique and interesting characters that are worth rooting for, these books could have been really awesome. The politics of the world was pretty cool, even though the world building wasn't very extensive, which I'm not complaining about. Okay. That's fine with me. But this idea of werewolves, vampires, and humans all existing and knowing that the other species exist, but having a lot of like beef with each other and not getting along, that was cool. That was interesting. Now, something that I really hated in both books was the unnecessary cussing. I don't mind if an author is writing fuck, damn, shit, a few times throughout a book, okay? But Misery refers to Serena's cat as that damn fucking cat like 4 times within like 5 pages. It's relentless. It's just one example again of this juvenile writing where it's like, this seems like the way that a 15-year-old thinks that adults communicate and talk to one another and about things. You know what I mean? Like, and that was a huge gripe that I had with these characters, is that they didn't feel real. They didn't feel like actual people. And look, I know they're vampires and werewolves and that's not real, but you know what I'm talking about. You absolutely know what I'm talking about. Okay. The dialogue was atrocious in both books. And there were just insults and just dialogue and conversations that were happening where I was like, this would never happen. These do not feel like real people. This does not feel like how people communicate with one another. Let me give you just some examples from Mate. Okay. Some words that are used mostly by Cohen, but these are insults. Okay. Are you ready? Shit dump, shart stain, jizz muffin, cum duck. What? What the fuck are you talking about? Nobody talks like that. Certainly not a 36-year-old man, werewolf, whatever. I mean, my God, like it was just bad, dude. Had the campy element been played up more so that it felt intentional, I think I might have been able to get past it, but it didn't feel intentional. It felt like, I don't know why you're writing these characters like this. Another example of how these characters, just specifically the female main characters, but Misery in particular, just didn't feel real. There's an example in chapter 4 where she is talking about, she's like in the kitchen and she's like playing around with utensil and she says, I pick up a ladle or a spatula. I forgot which one is which. This 25-year-old vampire who has spent the majority of her life living alongside humans, and one in particular, Serena, who up until that point we think is a human, who loves cooking, and Misery doesn't know the difference between a fucking spatula or a ladle. Are we serious? The amount of disbelief that I had to suspend in order to think that this was even plausible was ridiculous. In no world, especially because theoretically Misery is this, is really smart and tech savvy, and she's this like awesome hacker who's so, technically savvy and blah 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 blah. And it's like, and you don't know the difference between a ladle and a spatula. Really? Really? And of course, it's written off as like, well, she's a vampire, right? She doesn't really eat human food. She doesn't prepare human food, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that would make sense if you hadn't spent like 17 out of your 25 years living alongside human beings and seeing how they function and seeing how they live. Like, to not know the difference between a ladle and a spatula, it made me hate this character. That was chapter 4. And I was like, oh, fuck you then. Now, another example of Misery, like the thing I felt about Misery was she was such a try hard. Like the way that she was speaking, all of that cussing that she was doing, it was like, who are you? Chapter 24. Listen, I'm really trying to find that bitch Serena, and I've grown really fond of Lo's annoying little shit of a sister. You're talking about people that you care about. Why are you speaking about them this way? And again, it was supposed to be a testament to this, sarcastic, jaded character, but really all it came off as it was Misery being a tryhard. It was not endearing. I did not find it enjoyable. I was just like, you're gross to me. I don't care about you. And I felt that way about Cohen in Mate. I was like, the way that you're speaking, you're just calling people a cum duck and a shart stain. Like, what are we talking about, man? The other thing that I really disliked was the epilogue of Mate. I felt like it was just a gratuitous porn scene that was so unnecessary. It did not add any depth to our characters. It did not add any depth to their relationship dynamic. We already knew from the last chapter, from the final chapter of the book, that things had worked out and they got to be together. And I would have loved the epilogue to be maybe a few years later to find out that Serena wasn't actually infertile and that maybe they were pregnant with their first child or whatever the case may be. But it was just a gratuitous sex scene. It felt very cheap to end on that note. It turned it from being a wholesome moment and a wholesome ending to like, oh, right, more useless porn. Nice, excellent. And like the sex scenes worked with throughout the book because again, I felt like they were the ones that more time and care was actually taken to write those scenes than almost anything else in either of the books. But then we end the epilogue is just another sex scene where they're mate biting and whatever. And it's like, damn, dude, like I was actually comfortable with the ending and now you've just gone and spoiled it for me. Like you've just soured the way that this book ended. I didn't like it. In the epilogue and throughout the book of Mate, but specifically the epilogue, there is a quote where I'll put a screenshot of it where Cohen is talking about how little she is. And throughout the book, she's just so tiny that he keeps having to pick her up and put her on the counter. She's just so little, small girl. And it's like, dude, like, yes, I love that we're already having an age gap relationship of 11 years. And now we're infantilizing the FMC even more. And of course, there was like some pushback on that we as the reader are supposed to see as pushback because, Serena's talking about how independent she's been and how, she was forced to grow up sooner. Like she never got a real childhood. And so she's never really been a child and how, she's been through college and she had a career and she was an independent woman. And then it's like, but all of that, like that doesn't cancel out the infantilization of her character from Cohen and from herself, right? It's supposed to add like depth and nuance to a character that did not feel deep or nuanced. The infantilization of this character, especially when we have an age gap relationship, like I did not like that at all. She was always snuggling into his chest and like really like it felt like she was being babied, man. And the fact that she kept being called little and small and how he kept picking her up and she was just so tiny and it was like, dude, it's already like I can handle age gap relationships when they are done in a way that I think showcases that both parties are capable of understanding the power imbalances of these dynamics. But we just kept playing upon the fact that like Cohen is an alpha, big, strong, awesome dude who's also 11 years older. And then we have tiny little baby girl who just witty just needs to do, like that's what I was getting out of that fucking dynamic. And I was like, I'm grossed the fuck out. Look, I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum. If you like that, that's your business. And that's for you, that's cool. But for me, it grossed me the fuck out to no end. And it just like I wanted to root for these characters, man. I wanted to be on their team. I wanted to be on their side. I wanted to have that happily ever after and get the expectation that I want out of a romance, which is that things work out and that they love each other and blah, blah, blah. But like I just found myself having a very hard time rooting for characters like Cohen, like Misery, there was a point in time where I was rooting for Serena because I thought she was dying. And I was like, okay, yeah, a lot of the decisions that you're making, while they might not be the choices that I would make if I were in your position, i.e., lying to my closest family about the fact that I'm sick, I can understand why somebody would. You know what I mean? And I can understand that she was going through a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings and a lot of existential dread at this idea that she was potentially going to be dying very soon. And so I found that part of Serena's character to be very deep and very well fleshed out. And then to just come and find out that she's just in heat and she just really wants to get fucked real, real bad. I was like, uh-huh. Right. And I don't want to go as far as to say that it tainted Serena's character for me, but I will just say that I found myself caring about her a lot less after that point in time. I was like, okay, sure. I mean, am I surprised that that's how it ended up being? Not necessarily. Am I glad that she wasn't dying? Yeah, sure. I didn't want her to die. But at the end of the day, I was like, damn, like I found myself feeling so invested in the way that this character was portraying feeling about being sick and about dying. As someone who has been chronically ill for years and has felt a lot of the feelings that Serena was describing about her body and about feeling betrayed by it and about, all of these things, I was like, wow, this is very insightful in the way that disabled and chronically ill people can feel about our bodies, right? Not everybody does, but I know that those were feelings that I related to. And I was really rooting for her. And I was like, damn, and just to end up finding out that it's like, oh, this wasn't really a chronic illness. This wasn't a disability. This was actually, you just really, really, really need to get digged down. And it was like, no, that completely flattened her character for me in a way that I was not expecting, nor did I enjoy it. The other thing that I was really challenged with was that in both cases, for Bride and for Mate, both of these books didn't really catch my attention or have me feeling really invested until I got to about the 60% mark for both of them. For each one, I hit like 61, 62%. And I was like, okay, wait, like now I kind of care about what's going on. And you might be asking why I even bothered continuing to read if I wasn't really enjoying these books or feeling like I could enjoy these books until the 60% mark. And the reason for that is one of the pros, like one of the pluses of these books is that they are so easy to get through. I mean, you can really crush these books. I think I read Bride in about 4 hours, and then I read Mate in like 5.5, 6 hours or something like that of reading. Like they are not difficult books to get through whatsoever. And I'm saying this, I'm a slow reader. So for me, though, that's pretty fast. I looked at I think the audiobook for Mate was 14 hours. So the fact that I read it in 6, I was like, yeah, you can crush these books if you really want to. And I consider that a positive, right? I think that's a good thing to be able to, like, sometimes you do want to just turn your brain off and just like read a fucking book and just get right through it. Because I had just finished reading The Lord of the Rings. I mean, I'd read a couple books in between them, but going from reading Lord of the Rings to reading something like Bride and Mate by Ali Hazelwood, I mean, damn, like I needed that palate cleanse. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's kind of why that's why I decided to pick up these books in the first place. I had them on my TBR for a while and I was like, you know what? Let me just check these out really quick. So that's one of the good things. If you're just looking for something, if you're just looking for some smut to enjoy and you just want to get through something quick, these books are going to do it for you, man. Like that's really, I think, what I would consider one of the pros for these books is that that's kind of what you can expect going into them. Now, maybe some people read them and they felt very moved or like these were life-changing books. Maybe some people rated these 5 stars just based on vibes, and like that's cool. I'm never going to judge somebody for doing that. But me personally, I don't hand out 5 stars that easily. I just don't. I do need a book to be mind-blowing. And the thing is that these books had the potential to be, had these characters been written in a way that didn't feel like a juvenile writing adults, then I think had Ali Hazelwood taken just any amount of time and care beyond what she did to flesh out these characters and to make them feel more real and like actual people, then I think I really would have thoroughly enjoyed these. Now, as it stands, did I hate them? No. Because when I read romance and any of the subgenres like monster romance or anything like that, basically, like I said, it fulfilled the expectations of the genre. And so I think in that way, Ali Hazelwood hit the nail on the head. I think anything beyond that, though, they fell flat. They were rather irritating to get through. There were some artistic choices and liberties that were taken where I was like, are we serious? Like the ladle spatula thing, dude, I cannot get beyond it. Reading the term shart stain and cum duck, I was like, I cannot believe that this was not only written, but then it was published. But anyway, whatever. It's fine. So I guess overall, I'm settling right where I started, which is that, like, did I hate these books? Not really. I hated certain things within these books very much. Did I love these books? No. Did I find reading the sex scenes entertaining and find knotting to be very interesting? Yeah, I did actually. This was my first experience reading about knotting, and I actually didn't. I don't hate it, to be honest with you. I thought it was pretty interesting, pretty cool. I guess the where I'm gonna land on this one is it was fine. Like I said, I hated Cohen. I hated Misery's character. Lo was okay. Serena was okay until she wasn't. I did not like that she was being infantilized. I did not like Misery's sarcasm, or I didn't like her way that she was speaking about the people that she loved. I felt like her character was a try hard, and not in an intentional way, but in a way that was like, I think we're supposed to like her, but I just fucking don't kind of way. Okay, those were my thoughts on these books. Yeah. If you have read Bride and Mate by Ali Hazelwood, I would love to hear what you actually have to say about it, because when I was posting about it on TikTok, I found that like there were a lot of people that were agreeing with me in the sense of um thinking that the writing was pretty juvenile and very reminiscent of like Wattpad and AO3 and stuff, but they still enjoyed it because it is a romance and you still do get what you're going in for, kind of thing. And then I talked to other people that really genuinely liked the portrayal of Misery's character and how sarcastic and whatever she was. And I was like, okay. Like there were moments that worked, to be sure. I'm not going to say that everything about Misery sucked horribly, but overall, I just thought her character was very irritating, and I did not like her style of communication at all. And that kind of goes for Cohen as well, because he was very similar in that vein. And I just found him to be very irritating. And the fact that he was just supposed to be this big macho, strong alpha bro, I was like, get away from me. I think, okay, actually, you know what it is? It turns out that these books were just so very heteronormative. And even though I'm bisexual, I've never, like, my attraction to both men and women has never been heteronormative in any way. Like, it just ain't. And so I think that might be what I struggled with the most. I think that's why I didn't particularly care for a lot of the banter in this. I didn't care for a lot of the portrayal between each couple's dynamic, because it just wasn't relatable to me. That doesn't necessarily make it bad. It just means that, like, for my opinion on my channel for my video, I didn't fucking like it. And I'll leave it at that. Anyway, please let me know what you thought in the comments. I say this and I mean it. When I say please comment, like, please do, because I want to have conversations about these books. You know what I mean? That's why I make these videos. I read a lot of books that I don't make videos about because I don't care one way or the other. I don't want to talk about those books. I want to talk about these books. So tell me what you think about these books. Love to know. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.